All right, thank you, Dan. Welcome, everyone. It's 7 minutes after the hour. It's Saturday, May 12th, 2018, 46 degrees outside, open for business on the air. We're here every Saturday from 11 to 2. Tom Eaglehoff, your host here in Bozeman, and Shaman Tobin on the line with us from Vancouver. How you doing, man?
I indeed am here and trying to keep alive.
Yeah.
It's actually summertime here. It's 85 degrees.
Well, all right, and Skype is working, so it is Cantaloupe. So there's your problem.
There you go. You can hear me on Skype. How sweet is that?
I can hear you on Skype. So, all right. Also joining us, of course, every month we like to have see what's going on with the city. So Jeff Krauss is joining us, three-time mayor of Bozeman and current city commissioner and regent of the MSU and county treasurer. You've done it all, man.
A few things, yeah. That's it. Thank you for that introduction. And yeah, it's good to be back on after almost a month away. Yeah,
well, we like to get you in here at least every month or 6 weeks or so to see what the city's up to. And one of the things we wanted to talk to you about today, there's been an article in the Chronicle recently about the mobile home park on Wilson.
Yep.
And they want to move the mobile home folks out of there and put up townhouses or condominiums or whatever.
Something along those lines.
Yeah. So you know the owner of the park.
I do.
So you can give us a perspective on what he is thinking, and we, for the benefit of maybe some of the folks that don't remember, Bridger Park out was supposed to be developed. All the people were kicked out, and that never happened. Blixus went to prison or jail or somewhere, fined. The whole thing fell apart.
It did,
and all those people were, displaced and, had to have someplace else to go. So, so when people come in and displace these mobile home parks, we kind of have a bad taste in our mouth from that one episode. And we're also, you guys on the city commission keep touting low-income housing. Well, how do you kick out low-income trailers or mobile homes for condominiums and townhouses that are obviously going to be a lot more expensive for people to live in than those mobiles? So what's the story?
The story. The story is... there's a fella my age, I think 65 or 66, who's owned the piece of ground for a long time. I think he owns most of the trailers. So he's a little different than Bridger, where I think private owners own the trailers and rented the lots.
So he's renting the majority of it. There's, 10 or 15 or 20 or so there?
It's relatively
small.
Small
Part,
I know it isn't 20. So, it's something less than that. It's not zoned for mobile home parks the way Bridger was. Bridger was the classic, what we would call a trailer park or mobile home park, the classic kind where you rented a lot and you put your trailer on there. And people were caught badly with that because they owned these old mobile homes, which no other mobile home park would take.
Right.
Right. And so that many of them were abandoned. And in fact, I think the bank and the city spent money cleaning it up after it had been abandoned for a while. This is a little bit different than that. But basically, this is a person's private property, and he has spent a number of years, I think quite a number of years, being the proprietor of this mobile home park and being a landlord. Well, he wants to retire. So...
Sell the property,
and he sold the property to somebody who now owns it. And I don't know them, but I don't blame him for getting whatever he could, top dollar, consistent with the zoning, which is residential R3, which typically means townhomes and condos. And it's downtown. It's in the most expensive real estate in the area, right? Square downtown. So.
Yeah.
Low-income housing, particularly if you're just renting, is, not liable to hang in when the real estate's that expensive. The renting the beachfront property is probably going to go away. If you own the beachfront property, that's one thing, but if you're renting it, it's sometimes somebody's going to come along and want to build a big old thing on the beach.
Well, I know in the Bozeman Chronicle they were talking about this guy's 90 years old and he's paying about $209 for lot rent. I mean, I don't know where he's going to go and be able to do that. I don't know if he owns his mobile or not.
Right, but, and I when I read that, I didn't take it to mean he lived there, but maybe he did. Here's the thing, look around at what rent everyone else is paying.
Right.
It just isn't going to last forever, right? No. That isn't. I have talked to people before who've had a landlord that's been there a very long time, and they're giving them great rent. And then they had to move into the old folks' home, and the kids took it over, and bam, their rent was gone. There is a certain element of risk,
right? And when you do
that,
sure.
There just is.
Yeah, and, you're always at the mercy of whoever owns the land to kick you off or whatever. The other thing, you and I have spoken before, and I think you're not opposed to mobile home parks.
I love them.
Yeah. I was going to say that the rest of the commission is not as mobile friendly as you might be.
No, they're not. And no, the architects and the preservationists that are over on the south side, the other side of Maine from the mobile home park, they're all save the architecture.
Yeah.
No one's out saving the architecture of the mobile home park, so they don't have this, group of well-funded architects and whomever out there preserving bungalows, which in the day weren't, they were more expensive than mobile homes, but they were still affordable housing, the little shotgun house or the house that came in on you bought it from Sears Roebuck or something and it came in on a flat car. Those days are gone in Bozeman, but that was affordable housing too. We didn't tell those landlords, you got to keep the shotgun house in bad repair so that you can rent it out cheaply. We just didn't. We're not the lords of the mander in government. We don't say, hey, your father was a farmer and your grandfather was a farmer, so you must be a farmer for the government too. And we don't do that for landlords either, I hope. And I read where it was presented as the big bad California developer coming in. Well, I don't blame the developer for buying the property or developing the property or the guy for selling for what he could get for it. To me, he worked hard. Nor do I hold against him the fact that he only charged $209 or whatever it was lot rent. Great, for all those years he treated, when it was his business and he was doing it, he treated his customers well.
Yeah.
I'm not holding that against him, and I'm not, because he did that, suddenly putting him in an economic bind. I would never vote to do that. When the trailer park, when the mobile home park Bridger went away, and we saw that development wasn't going to come in, I was mayor, and I said, let's bring back the RMH, residential mobile home, zoning on that piece of ground so that all it can be used for is RMH. And someone else can buy it for that and run a mobile home park, thinking actually that the city would go in with HRDC and try to have one. I sound like the ghost of Tom Joad there, communal living and stuff, but I think that's one way trailer parks work. And what I was told was, well, you can get a lot denser and a better conditions, and those mobile home parks, they deteriorate and they depreciate, and so we don't want to encourage that. And so I was outvoted 1-4. I put it on anyway. You don't put stuff on as the mayor, even though you're going to get defeated 1-4. But I did because I wanted to make a point.
Yeah.
This should go back to the mobile home park that it was, and this is valuable. The last one that went in 20 years ago, Gene Cook did behind the mall, or maybe it was Gene Graff. I don't know who it was. The one behind the mall with the manufactured homes. That's the last one that came in, and boy, people came unglued that was going to come in. But it's a good project, and people value where they live there.
Yeah. Well, I wrote a blog on this, and it was picked up by the editor of the two biggest mobile home parks or magazines, I guess, in the country.
Oh.
And he is with us now. Tony Kovach is on the line. Tony, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Tom. How are you and Jeff doing?
Doing good. All right. Well, you saw my blog on this and contacted me, and so we wanted to have you on for your perspective on this. What's the mobile home story, I guess, around the nation, and where are mobile home parks headed?
One, I appreciate you having me on, and I'm just going to tip my hat to both you and Jeff. You guys are the local experts, and so, I'm not sure that I'm qualified to necessarily weigh in on what's happening in Bozeman specifically, but what I can tell you is about the macro issues in the industry. Is that fair enough?
Yes, that would be great.
So one, I think part of the reason that people tend to have a fear about what some people call mobile homes or trailers, one, there hasn't been a mobile home built in this country in 41 years. So everything that's been built in the last 41 years is a manufactured home, and there's actually millionaires and billionaires that are buying and living, and they love those manufactured homes. So there's people like Kid Rock. He owns a Rolls Royce. Well-known entertainer. He's got a private jet. He sold his mansion to buy a manufactured home, but he says he loves. He was on the Dan Rasner's TV show, the Big Interview a while ago. So there's people like Stevie Nicks or Matthew McConaughey, Pamela Anderson, Minnie Driver, rich and famous people that are deciding after they're famous that they want to live in a manufactured home. So a person has to ask themselves why. Then you look at the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. The current secretary, as we know, is Ben Carson, MD. He recently said in Senate testimony that manufactured homes today are amazing. And in that same testimony, Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina, he said that he grew up in what he called a mobile home. So when you look at these experiences, people that are breaking the mold, it's not just poor people that are living in manufactured homes. There's rich and famous people that are opting that. So my first point is this. If a brain surgeon, literally a brain surgeon, says that manufactured homes are amazing, and these rich and famous people are saying that, hey, this is a housing option that needs to be considered to solve this affordable housing crisis, then why wouldn't more Americans at least open their minds to that possibility? And in towns like Bozeman, where you have a lack of affordable housing, and it's a crisis around the country, why not make the access to manufactured homes more accessible? Does that make sense?
It does, and we would allow it, and we have areas zoned RMH. But the thing is, no one's proposed one. The last one was proposed many years ago, and no one has ever come back. When I proposed rezoning back to RMH when the big development failed, nobody showed up and said, if you do this, I'll buy it and put brand new ones on there or whatever. Tom knows if I wasn't a commissioner, I'd probably be living in his neighborhood right now. I mean, I really did think, have thought hard about that. I just think there are two things. One is nobody's putting them in around here anyway. I think in Montana, no one's putting them in. And the regulatory environment where they have to be just like a regular, a stick-built house, has really worked against what we think of as traditions.
And to that point, and I appreciate you saying that, Jeff, under the federal law, manufactured housing actually has what they call enhanced preemption. That's been true since the year 2000.
Yes, it has. I know that.
So if you know that, then you're unique, sir, because most city officials don't have a clue about that enhanced preemption. So whether you do it in a community setting, which you're calling a mobile home park, or whether you're doing it on individual lots, there certainly ought to be an opportunity for people under that enhanced preemption to buy a manufactured home on a piece of property that's maybe a vacant lot in a neighborhood and put that home in.
Yep.
Now, what typically happens is you get the NIMBYites, the pushback. They think that if you put a manufactured home in their neighborhood that they're going to lose value. Well, there's been research on this, and that research shows that manufactured homes can appreciate and do appreciate side by side with conventional housing. And then there's the people out there that think that mobile homes burn down or mobile homes burn away with the first wind. There's all this third-party research. And when I say third-party, not people in our industry.
Yes.
And that research tells us that manufactured homes are actually less likely to burn in a fire than a conventional house. And because it's engineered, these houses have to move down the highway. They're actually more storm resistant than a conventional house as long as it's properly installed. So, in terms of communities being opened up, which you're calling mobile home parks, I know that we covered a story recently, and I can't tell you the name of the town, but it's there in Montana. They're in the process of developing a manufactured home community, too. So I think part of the reason we see this resistance is precisely because the public has a 40, 50, 60-year-old outdated notion of what a manufactured home is today. Well, that man in that story that's 90 years old and is paying $290 a month lot rent, I read that story, and, he probably bought a home back in the mobile home days. So what he's living in is not what's coming off the factory lines today. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does. There were a lot of people in this area, and I don't know how many are left, that made that worked for a living at Gallatin Homes. Gallatin Homes made mobile homes out in Belgrade, and there are a lot of Gallatin Homes all over this valley, and it was a reputable manufacturer and a reputable employer. And when they closed, that hurt a lot of people.
Yep, that did. Let's take a trip to Canada and get Shane's perspective. You've got some numbers on mobile homes in Canada, do you, Shane?
Actually, in the U.S., and numbers tell it all. 20 million Americans live in mobile homes today, and the top-ranking state for mobile homes is 20% in South Carolina and 18% in North Carolina. New Mexico is 17 at number 3. Interesting thing about a mobile home is it's a great starter home for young people because you can buy a mobile home for as little new single wide, around $40,000, and a double wide for around, $75,000, up to any amount, of course, any price that you want to improve on it. And the fascinating thing about it is that you can buy property and put a mobile home on, pay it off, and then you're in a position to build. The other thing that's fascinating too is the size. I mean, square footage on a mobile home can range by 16 by 80 square feet. That's like 1,800 square feet on a double wide. So it's similar to one of the World War II built homes that were built, across your country. They were only 800 or 900 square feet, and so it's a great way for people to start a family and have a home they own as their own, and find a piece of real estate that's not too expensive outside of town and start living.
There you are. All right. Thanks, Shane. All right. We've got about, 4 minutes left, guys. Tony, thoughts on Shane's numbers?
Actually, I think Shane was close. There's like 22 million Americans living in manufactured homes today, and maybe 20% of those, roughly 1 out of 5, are those pre-HUD code mobile homes. So, and really, it's kind of a testimony to those old pre-HUD code homes that there's so many of them still around today. I mean, they were built as temporary housing back after World War II, and now there's still, a couple of million of them still hanging around. So the ones today, the ones that like this property you were talking about behind your mall there, those are homes that when they're properly installed, they're going to look and live the same as a conventional house, except it's going to cost, according to the Census Bureau, about half the cost to build versus conventional housing. And, there was a study done out of California and Illinois, 2 researchers out of those states. They determined that the lack of affordable housing is costing the U.S. $2 trillion in lost GDP. So if you break that out and you figure out what that costs a town or a city like Bozeman, there's probably millions of dollars in lost productivity because you don't have enough affordable housing. So whether it's in a community or whether it's on individual sites, having those manufactured homes, it shouldn't be something people are afraid of. They should research it, understand the issue, and then they're going to come to realize that it's not what it used to be 50 years ago.
All right. Tony, give us a little bit on the 2 magazines you've got for people who might be interested in reading more about mobile home life or whatever.
Thanks, Tom. There's Manufactured Home Living News, or mhlivingnews.com, And that's designed, Tom, for the general public. So people that are doing basic research, we get media on there, public officials, people that are shopping for housing. That's mhlivingnews.com. mhpronews.com. That's for investors or industry professionals. A lot of people from the federal government or state governments are on that site on a regular basis. People like Jeff that maybe are doing research on a particular topic, they'll often end up on mhpronews.com. They're both number one in their categories, and I happen to be one of those guys. I've lived in conventional housing. I've owned a number of manufactured homes. I made money on 3 out of the 4 manufactured homes that I owned, and the conventional houses I owned were new houses or nearly new homes in nice neighborhoods. So these homes live the same as conventional houses. You just pay less for them. It's just common sense.
Let's take a quick phone call before we have to go. 522-TALK is the number, 522-8255. Calling on the air with Tony Kovach and Jeff Krauss. What's up?
Hi, guys. This is Keith.
Hey, Keith.
I'm on the Belgrade City County Planning Board, and a woman came before us. She has a trailer court, and she wanted to put an addition on it. And the rules in Belgrade and the county, I guess, was in on this. You have to have like 40-foot wide paved streets, curbs, and sidewalks, 5-foot sidewalks, both sides. She said, I can't afford that to put in a trailer court. So guess what? I don't know how many units she planned, but she just was absolutely priced out of the market. She absolutely couldn't do it.
All right, I got to go, Keith. Thanks for the call. All right. Tony, thanks for being here. We got to go. We're at the bottom of the hour here. We got news coming up and all of that. And we'll have Senate candidate Russ Fagg will be in with us next. And Shane Matobin's going to be here, and Jeff's going to hang around. So we thank you, Tony, for being on with us. We appreciate your input, and we'll talk again.
Thank you very much, Tom. And Jeff, you hang in there, sir.
I'll do it. Yep.
All right, we'll be back with more stuff right after this. All right, welcome back, everyone. It is 24 minutes before the top of the hour. It's Saturday, May 12th, 2018, 47 degrees outside. Shane Matobin on the line with us from Vancouver, British Columbia. And
all the way across the border.
Yep. And City Commissioner, 3-time Mayor Jeff Krauss is in the house with us.
Glad to be here.
And on our newsmaker line, we've got Judge Russ Fagg, who is running for U.S. Senate to unseat John Tester. So welcome back, Judge. Happy to have you on.
Nice to be back on, Tom. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah. So some things we want to chat about for the people who aren't familiar with you. Give us the Judge Fagg elevator pitch, and then we'll get into some issues.
That sounds great, Tom. So I was a district court judge down in Billings for 22 years, handled about 25,000 cases, which I think puts me in a unique position to really understand what Montanans are facing. I like to say I've seen the best in humanity and the worst in humanity. I'm used to looking at two sides of an issue and making tough decisions. I was a Republican in the legislature prior to that, been married 26 years to an awesome woman from Anaconda. We're blessed to have twins who are sophomores in college, a boy and a girl. And at the end of the day, I've got some great endorsements, some Montana support, and I really feel like I'm the one that can defeat Senator Tester in November of 18.
All right. Couple things I wanted to talk to you about, and then we'll take some phone calls. One, you are for a pro-balanced budget amendment, and I'm not sure how that would work with our system. The government has a unified budget. Montana, we balance the budget, but we only balance the operating budget. We don't balance the capital budget. So we've got to be able to borrow money somewhere along the line. So how would a balanced budget work under the U.S. Accounting system?
Well, let's start with the beginning. We are $22 trillion in debt. That's about $175,000 per taxpayer, and it's just unconscionable that we're passing along that kind of debt to the next generation and future generations. And as George Rogers once said, when you're in a hole, the first thing you have to do is stop digging. So I just believe firmly that we need a balanced budget. As President Eisenhower said, we cannot be strong if we go broke. And I'm just very concerned that we are going to implode from within if we continue to have this unsustainable pattern of spending more than we bring in. And so, I mean, basically, there's lots of ways to look at it because there are on-budget and off-budget lines. But at the end of the day, we know how much revenue we bring in, which this year was about $3.4 trillion. Unfortunately, we're going to spend about $4.2 trillion, so we're going to be about $800 billion in deficit. I just find that to be unconscionable that we're doing this to the next generation. And so that's why I'm so firmly, to me, it's the number one issue facing America. We have had 50 out of the last 55 budgets have been deficit budgets. And, you know, that's just not sustainable. I don't know what happens when the greatest country in the world, and I believe we are the greatest country that's ever been, and I don't say that lightly, goes broke, but I think it's going to be catastrophic, of course, for the United States and all the citizens here in Montana.
Well, one of the problems is that almost all the way through the Obama administration, I think we only had one budget that was actually sent to Congress. One of the things that Shane and I talk about all the time is that if you have a budget, all these agencies have to be audited, and no one wants that.
Well, but what's wrong with an audit? I mean,
well, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that they don't want it.
Yeah, I mean, they don't want it, but big deal. We are the people. We need to hold people accountable. And
absolutely.
So we need audits, and we need to make sure they're spending the money where they're supposed to be spending it. And just because the bureaucracy doesn't want it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. And I'm obviously we agree on that, but I mean, this is just, we're going the wrong direction, and that's really why I'm running, is I think we are going the wrong direction, and our senior senator, John Tester, is a big part of that, and I can talk about that if you want, but he's just out of step with Montana.
All right. Let's take a phone call. 522-TALK is the number, 522-8255. Calling you on the air with Judge Russ Fagg. What's your comment?
Well, my comment is, Russ, I'm glad you're on the phone or on the show, because I didn't know you were going to be on. But I'm going to vote for you. So
thank you.
You got one, but
two.
Two, there you go. Oh yeah, I guess you're going to vote for yourself. Three. There you go.
Shane's going to vote for you too. There you go. He's in Canada.
We keep talking. We're going to have a whole pile. But
I want to get into the Canadian interference on your elections.
Okay. But I missed your last segment, and I just wanted to tell you that I live in a Gallatin home.
Yeah.
And and it's been here since 1973, and it's still in great shape.
Yeah, so, I live in one too, so I can attest to what you're saying.
Yep. Anyway, that's it.
All right, hey, thanks for the call. All right.
Hey, thanks a bunch.
There you go.
Support.
Checks in the mail for him, I guess, huh, Russ?
Well, I just want to, Jeff Krauss here. Mark Roscoe sent me a nice fundraising letter on your behalf, so I'm going to have to, after listening to you talk about balanced budget, which, by the way, Tom and I discuss and argue about all the time.
We do, yeah.
You can borrow money for long-lived assets, just like a person does borrows money for takes a mortgage out for a house or.
Oh yeah.
But when you're just burning it on the lawn of the White House like we're doing these days, we need to make that change.
Well,
congratulations for making that an issue.
Yeah, one of the things I always point out is that my parents saddled me with the interstate highway system and the space program, and were those bad expenditures? I don't think so.
No, I mean, they are income-producing assets in a sense. They're building the infrastructure, but like, if you buy a house and it's going to appreciate, that's one thing. But I always tell my kids, never buy a car on credit because it's a depreciating asset. That's a terrible way to go.
Right. There you go. All right.
Well, NASA does hold the most patents in the world of any organization.
Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't mind another space race if it were targeted towards energy or, energy independence or something like that. But we don't have leadership that will do that right now. Nobody's done that in decades.
Well, you're seeing space move to the private sector, and I don't want to get into that particularly, but, Elon Musk is sending rockets up all the time, so more power to them.
I agree.
Yeah. Judge, let's move on to the Second Amendment, because obviously in Montana that is a big deal, and I think all of us appreciate the, do not be infringed or will not be infringed to carry a weapon. The problem seems to be that the wrong people are getting hold of them, and I'm not sure there's any way to prevent that. I'm not sure what law or rule or regulation we can pass that's going to keep guns out of the hands of bad people.
Tom, there is no rule, law, or regulation that will keep hands out of bad people. At the end of the day, criminals, by their very definition, don't pay attention to the law. And so it's not a question of more regulations or more laws. I think Chicago is the shining example. They have more anti-gun laws than any city in the United States. And every year they're number 1 or number 2 on homicide by gun. So it's not a question of more regulations. You're right. Shall not be infringed is very clear. And by the way, John Tester is no friend of the Second Amendment. He voted for the Manchin-Toomey Gun Control Act of 2013. He voted against Judge Gorsuch for the Supreme Court, who's very strong on the Second Amendment. He voted for Judge Sotomayor for the Supreme Court, who is very anti-Second Amendment. But at the end of the day, we have a problem. There's no question, but it goes deeper than laws and regulations. It's a sociological issue. It's a mental health issue. And those are the things that we need to talk about. But more regulations is not the answer. I appreciate these young people that are protesting. I love it when people protest because they are getting involved, but they're protesting the wrong thing. We got to go deeper, too. I mean, I read the other day that the average 18-year-old in America has seen 15,000 people murdered by the time they turn 18 on their Xbox or Game Boy or on TV or at movies. And there's something amiss with that. And, we have a family issue, but we have a mental health issue in this country, and that's where we need to go. But criminals aren't going to pay attention. We can outlaw guns. Criminals aren't going to pay attention to those sort of situations.
So, Judge Fagg, are you a supporter of your president?
I am a supporter of the president, and I like what he's doing with Judge Gorsuch, for instance. I like the tax cut package. I like the deregulation. I will support him until it is not in the best interest of Montanans. One example that I'm very concerned about is these tariffs. Montana's heartbeat is agriculture. If we get into a trade war, 50% of Montana's agriculture gets exported out of the country. And so if we get into a trade war, that would really be detrimental to our Montana farmers and ranchers. And so that's one area that I don't support the president on. But generally, I'm very much a supporter of the president, like the direction he's taking the country.
Yeah. I think we've seen tariffs, most of them in the past, and Shane can probably elaborate more on this than I can, but most of them last about 18 months and they're done. They're more of a bring people to the bargaining table tactic more than they are But you have to think about, we have 320 or 330 million people here who are the richest customers in the world, and we're pretty much given free access to those customers. 95% of our stuff is non-agricultural that comes in, and almost half of that comes in absolutely free. There's no payment, no tariff, no fee, no nothing. So, the other thing is that I'm wondering about whether when we look at what's happened so far, we haven't seen a dramatic move in things, that are in the tariffs.
Well, at the end of the day, I'm a kind of a free market guy. I think that's the most efficient allocation of resources. And when you start to put barriers on trade, the consumer ends up paying for that. And we all know that. And so I really am not a supporter of tariffs. Now, I understand the president may be doing it as a negotiating tactic, and I think he's a shrewd negotiator, so I can certainly see that may have some sense. But boy, I don't want to get into any sort of a trade war, because that would just, decimate. I mean, they're talking about a 25% tariff on wheat, for instance, and that would just be terrible if we went that direction.
Yeah, wheat and soybeans have been down because of that, I believe. Shane and I talk about that in our last segment. We do a market wrap-up every week, and we talk about soybeans and wheat and gold and all of that, oil, the whole 9 yards. Do you think the president was smart to get out of the Iran deal?
Oh, absolutely. That was a terrible deal for the United States. And I think Israel has produced some pretty good evidence that they're not following the deal that was struck. That was another situation that John Tester supported. I think it was a terrible treaty, and we ended up giving billions of dollars to Iran. And I think it was a mistake, and I support the president. Now we can negotiate from a point of strength and really have a real agreement on them not going the nuclear route. So, yeah, I support the president on that.
Well, I think there was, aren't there 5 countries involved in that? Us, France, Russia, and China.
And Great Britain, I believe.
And Great Britain was the other one. And it was my understanding, Judge, that if Iran violated this agreement, sanctions could be slapped back on them, and I can't believe Russia would vote for that. But my understanding is what they're reporting now is that Iran is going back to their nuclear thing, pursuit of nuclear weapons. Where's the other 4 countries?
Well, and I think they're not necessarily going back. The way I understand it, they really never lived up to their side of the agreement from the beginning. And
yeah,
they're
just kind of going on business as usual and laughing at us because we aren't doing anything. And
so it's better to step up, and like I think the president is trying to do, and say, no, we're not going to go down this route and have you thwart this agreement. And you're right. Everybody, hopefully Russia, Great Britain, China, the other countries will say, hey, this isn't right. I mean, it seems like we're making some direction in North Korea, and I think China's been part of that, putting some pressure on North Korea. And wouldn't that be something? I mean, that would be the coup of the decade if we could get North Korea to get rid of their nuclear program.
Well, yeah, is there any way that we can, Reagan used to say trust but verify.
Right.
I'm just wondering how reliable any agreement with these folks would be. We've been, obviously we've had an armistice there since the 50s, but or a ceasefire or whatever you want to call it. I guess war is still in place, but I don't know.
We have to have free access.
Yeah, we do.
To their nuclear weapons program or nuclear program, and I think that's been the problem. They are not giving us free access to be able to verify. I agree with that trust but verify philosophy.
Well, that was the problem with the Iran deal. You couldn't go into military installations, so why not just test them there?
Sure.
I mean, you should have unfettered access if you're going to have an agreement like this. And I can't believe we would sign off on something like that says. You can go in this room, but you can't go in this room.
Well, and I don't want to get on President Obama because, I like to support our president regardless of the party, but I think he missed the boat on that one. I'll just say it like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would tend to agree with that. The other one, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, out of that one as well. Good, bad, otherwise?
I think generally it's good. I think we need to renegotiate that one as well, and we can do it better when we're out of it and say we need to renegotiate these points. I mean, another point would be we're in it and we try to renegotiate, but I think we have more. We bring more authority to the table when we say we're just not going to go along with this agreement anymore, and we need to renegotiate it. We need a TPP agreement, but I think it needs to be renegotiated so it's more favorable to the United States.
Yeah. The wall, Trump says we're going to start building the wall across San Diego. Your thoughts on the wall?
Well, what I always say, Tom, is I definitely support secure borders. I want to know exactly who is coming into the country and when they're coming into the country. I talked to the task force commander here in Billings of the Drug Task Force just a couple of days ago. It blew me away, Tom. He said that 99% of the meth that's coming into Montana currently is coming in through Mexico illegally by the Mexican gangs. It's coming in through California and Texas. Montana is a targeted market because there's so much profit to be had with it. So we absolutely need secure borders. We know what a devastation meth has been on the society, the Montana citizens. You can hardly, if you talk to 3 families, 1 or 2 of them have been touched by meth in some fashion. It's a horrible drug. I've seen it in court. Over 50% of the crimes and over 50% of the abuse neglect cases have a meth component to them. Even the thefts and the burglaries, people, it's a $100 to $200 a day habit, so they have to go steal things to pay for that habit. It's a huge plague on society. So we absolutely need secure borders.
Yeah. The other thing, DACA, is kind of still hanging around. What's your thoughts on DACA?
Well, to me, we are misplacing. I mean, the Dreamers. I've been told there's 78 of them in Montana, and yet John Tester was one of 18 to vote for the shutdown to support DACAs. And that was to the detriment of Montana veterans and Montana children through the CHIP program. I think that was totally misplaced. My feeling on the DACAs, on the Dreamers, is this: hey, listen, if they're producing, if they're contributing, if they have a job, if they're paying taxes, we need to give them a way to become citizens. They don't get to cut the line, but make them go through the same process that all of our ancestors did. On the other hand, if they have a criminal record, if they're not producing, if they don't have a job, if they're not paying taxes, they need to go back to their home country. It's a merit-based system. That's what the president is talking about, and I support that merit-based system 100%.
Yeah. I think if you're going to allow people into the country, they need to bring a skill or an expertise or something that they will be able to utilize and not be on the government dole for welfare and food stamps and everything else.
Absolutely.
So Absolutely. We need to do that. The other thing, I think, looking at the midterm elections coming up, and one of the things Shane and I have talked about a lot is that there is a possibility of Ginsburg finally giving it up or being forced to give it up. Because she can't stay awake during the deliberations, and Justice Kennedy making noises that he might bail as well. So very important, since the Senate is going to be in charge of the next Supreme Court justices, and I can't believe within the next 8 years that we aren't going to lose at least one and maybe two.
I've also been told that Justice Clarence Thomas is thinking about retiring so that President Trump can name his successor. So that could be a huge shift on the Supreme Court, which I think would be incredibly good for the Montana and America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any aspirations to be a Supreme Court justice down the road?
My hand is up. I'd love to be on the Supreme Court, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. Even though I was a judge for 22 years, I don't think coming from the University of Montana is quite going to be the ticket. But boy, talk about an interesting and powerful position, and we need justices that are going to follow the law, not make it. And that's what I like about Gorsuch, is he's a guy that's going to follow the law and the Constitution and not make it. And that's exactly what we need on the Supreme Court.
Well, the other thing that came up, of course, is that we had one of the District 9, the circuit, Ninth Circuit, I guess, die. So there's going to be a change there. Obviously, they're the most overturned court in the land, as you well know. 85 or 90% of their cases are overturned by the Supreme Court, and California seems to be going crazy by the day. So I'm wondering who we're going to get in. I still think it'll be 2-1 on all the votes if we appoint somebody and get them confirmed over there. But I don't know.
Yeah, the Ninth Circuit is 1 year they reversed 19 out of 20 times.
Yeah.
They just are kind of almost a rogue circuit to some degree, and I hate to say that because I really like Judge Thomas. He's from Billings, and he's just a great guy. Sid Thomas, he's wonderful, and I know his wife, Martha, she is also terrific, but they don't have a good track record.
Yeah. So, Judge Fagg, would you be in favor of staying in session as a senator to see that all of the nominees for your president are approved or disapproved, rather than this blockage by the Democrats with their 30-hour, debating and blocking? Because I think that one of the biggest problems Americans have is they see the Republicans with a majority in the Senate, and the Senate Majority Leader won't keep you in session to force these votes until it's all done.
I totally agree with that. They need to go back and do their work, not only the nominees, but the Congress has passed over 400 bills in the last year that the Senate has not voted on, and I just find that to be wrong. And they, vote on them, vote them up, vote them down, but let's have a vote. I mean, literally, Congress has passed over 400 bills that Senate has not voted on, and that's just wrong. So they need to stay in session and do their work. That's what we're paying them for.
There you go. Got about a minute left, Judge. Any final thoughts for the potential voters of Montana that need to know about you?
Well, let me just say this. Absentees are going out today. The election starts today, or they went out yesterday. They're going to land today. I believe I'm the one that can defeat John Tester. I'm a fourth-generation Montanan, no credit to me, but it just takes the issue that some of my opponents have off the table. You know, Matt's from Maryland. He signed a document just in 2015 that said he was a Maryland resident under perjury of law. The Democrats are going to beat him up on that. He's run for 5 offices in the last 8 years. It just kind of shows he moved to Montana to begin his political career. When he got elected auditor and just a few months into it, he decides he wants to run for the U.S. Senate. Our first debate in Bozeman, he said, quite frankly, it doesn't matter who the auditor is. Well, then, Matt, I disagree. It's important who's on the land board. I don't want a Democrat to appoint for that. So, Matt, just stay where you are. And so those are the type of things that people need to think about. They're the type of things that Democrats are going to hit Matt on. So I would just ask for people's support. I believe I'm the guy that can defeat Senator Tester. And I'm not the only one. I've got the endorsements of Governor Roscoe, the late Governor Martz, Governor Stevens, Congressman Hill, Congressman Rehberg, over 70 Montanans who have served in the legislature. I've raised over $1 million. Over 3/4 of that was from Montanans. I've raised more contributions from Montana than all 3 of my primary opponents combined. So I think that's what it's going to take to defeat Senator Tester. I think I'm the candidate that can do it, and I'm asking everybody who's listening for your vote and your support. I would be very grateful.
All right. Judge Russ Fagg, running for the U.S. Senate. Thanks for being with us, Judge, and we appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom and Jeff. I appreciate you guys and appreciate your support.
All right. Thanks a lot. All right. We got to duck out here, pay a couple bills. Jeff's going to hang around, I guess. We'll talk about more stuff right after this. All right. Thank you, Dan. Welcome back, everyone. It is 7 minutes after the hour. It's Saturday, May 12, 2018, 49 degrees. I'm your host, Tom Eaglehoff. Shane Matobin is on the line with us from beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. Shane, how you doing up there?
Well, ready, willing, and able.
All right. And
my middle name.
Right. Half man, half amazing. That's who he is. All right. We've got Jeff Krauss in the house, former 3-time mayor of Bozeman, current city commissioner. And, well, you got a meeting coming up on Monday night. What's going on?
You know, I wasn't there last week. I was in sunny southern.
Yeah, I know. They voted to annex Four Corners.
Did they? Oh, great. But I think, you know, if you read the paper, if you read the letters to the editors, you can see some stuff there. I think one of the things that we're going to be talking about is, what did they do? They voted to put the thing on the ballot, the Law and Justice Center.
Yeah.
One of the things that
going as a loan without the county.
Yeah, definitely. A much less expensive proposition in the long run.
Yeah, because you own the land, do you not?
We do own the land.
Yeah.
We don't have to buy land. There's a whole lot of reasons for that, but most of them involve, you know, every time you change the thermostat, having a big sit down and negotiating with the county about everything, you know. Mm-hmm. I think you and I didn't sit down with our neighbors and negotiate the common space we were going to use together, so yeah, we still have our own facilities.
Now, is it the police are going to be in there? Who else is in there?
Police, the prosecuting attorneys, the judges, the 2 fire departments are going to be there.
Oh, okay. So it's going to be a...
and a coffee room.
Yeah.
There's always in a coffee room, you know. And I'm for a coffee room, just so you know. I generally had a coffee room somewhere, private or public, you know. Boy, those auditors love their coffee. I would tell you that. You know, make those numbers line up.
I was going to say, yeah, you got to keep sharp.
Ticking and tying and ticking away. I know that on Monday night we're going to talk about affordable housing as well, specifically the inclusionary zoning where you have to build housing. And we have in my neighborhood, just down the street from me, the first 8 houses built under inclusionary zoning. And, of course, I've pointed out, I think that I live on a lot that's only 2,800 square feet. and that it's only 4 doors down where the row of inclusionary housing is. So I'm trying to live the dream. Inclusionary zoning is where you can build 8 houses at market rate, but then you have to build 2 where you lose money. Essentially, it's sort of an institutionalized slavery where you work for free or you actually have to pay to work.
Yeah.
And, for those reasons, I've always opposed it. Also, in watching the process work, they had to get this whole team, so there had to be engineers and developers and house builders and people from HRDC and the government and commissioners, and everybody had to get together and kind of give birth to 8 houses, right? When we need hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, right?
Yeah. Is 8 the drawing line, or if you do 8 or more, or 6
I think
more,
it's 10. I think it's more than 10. Yeah, I think it's right now.
So if you do 10 or
10.
more, then 2 of them got to be.
One. You get a choice. You get to hit a range.
Okay. You
get to hit a range. So you get. It's only 1 if you really give it away. If you really work for free.
And you got to have a park.
You got to have park and sidewalks on both sides. And that's the thing is my neighborhood, I don't have parking on the street. I don't have curbs and gutters. I have a very narrow, essentially I drive into my driveway off an alley called Wooner. So, they have saved money doing all those things, and they're barely able to, with this huge effort, get some of these done. I think if we're going to actually commit to affordable housing, we got to find a solution that doesn't take 6 months and 20 people and extraordinary circumstances to get done. That effort is going to wear out people trying to do that. If we want affordable housing, our policy must allow housing to be built through our regulatory environment.
All right. We've got a caller patiently waiting. 522-TALK is the number. Caller, thanks for waiting. You're on the air with Jeff Krauss and Shane and me. What's up?
Daniel R. Peterson.
Hi.
There's a joke that goes, one guy was complaining that he couldn't find a good job, and the other guy says, I found a good one with government. I work for the Redundancy Department of Redundancy. Now, are you one of those that are holding out for 2 buildings with 2 courtrooms and 2 break rooms and 2 locker rooms and endless hallways? Or are you going to set potential differences aside and build into one building? Incidentally, they had a poll in the Chronicle, and the vast majority of the rank and file were for one building for both city and county.
I lived in a place down south where I grew up where the vast majority of people thought black people should live in separate areas from white people. So I have never actually gone with the vast majority. Typically, I think the primary threat to people's rights and to making good decisions comes from the tyranny of the majority. And so what I would tell you, Daniel R. Peterson, is I worked for the county for a decade, and I have been involved in city politics for now my 15th year. And I can tell you that it will be less expensive, more efficient, provide better service, and less expensive in the long run for the city to build a consolidated law and justice center that will have fire departments, prosecutors, judges, and the police department all in one building. And all of the associated efficiencies related to sharing, with all those departments doing the sharing, will accrue to the taxpayers of the city. So all of that will be better. Once we leave the Law and Justice Center, then there will be lots of space over at the Law and Justice Center. There will be courtrooms abandoned, so the county can use those courtrooms. There will be police space abandoned, that the county can use that police space for their sheriff's department. So there will be a significant amount of space freed up at the county facility, and they can move into that and then make their decisions about when they want to build another building. But at the present time, The police department has been in dire circumstances for well over a decade, and we need to do something about that. And if this partnership had been such a great thing over the years, we would have built a building by now. But actually the voters said no to a consolidated building. They said no to a separate building. I think because of the armored attack vehicle, and I think I can make a good case. I don't know if I'm persuasive enough, but I can make a good case for why the voters of the city would benefit greatly from combining all the city circumstances over there on Rouse, where other city departments are, and having them all centrally located there.
Well, already owning the land would go a long way, because land is the most expensive part of doing this, and in many cases, it depends on how big the building is, but certainly eliminating the land cost would save the taxpayers a bundle of money.
Well, they're going to build. The proposal was always to build on the Law and Justice Center site, but the county, of course, would require that city taxpayers, who are also county taxpayers, buy the land that the city portion of the condo would be on. I think it's sometimes forgotten that people that live inside the incorporated city limits of Bozeman also live in the city, in the county of Gallatin. And so, no, that one is, I don't think that one's huge. I think the larger issues have to do with being able to make decisions to respond to the future, the way that we address what we're doing as a city, looking to the future, and what the county does with their facilities. I think that the cultures are very different, and putting them together has not resulted in great decisions over the years. If being together was a great decision, any time over the last 20 years, this has been studied over and over repeatedly and redundantly. Daniel R. Peterson, repeatedly and redundantly all over and over and over again, something would have been done, but it hasn't. And I think that's Exhibit A for why it's time to get off the schneid and build a municipal law and justice facility.
Well, and the other thing with the proposal, I guess the last proposal that was put up, people in the city would pay, people in the county would pay, but if you lived in the city,
you paid twice.
Yeah, if you lived outside the city, then you would only pay the county portion.
That's right, and that'll be the same with any joint facility. That'll be the same regardless.
But I mean, the county residents, me for example, won't have to pay for the city building itself.
Right. That's right.
Because I live in the county, not the city.
So this is just on the city. This would just be for city voters. That's true.
So there you are.
All right. And I can make a good case for direct democracy that decades ago people might have voted for segregation, but we have a more educated and experienced voter group, and you're not going to have real weird backward decisions. So you're just saying in 20 years, you guys, as a few elite, can't get anywhere. Why don't you just let the voters in direct democracy take a stab at it?
Well,
they turned it down twice.
It's going to be on the ballot, so the voters have the choice. So
they do.
There you go.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the call. All right. Yeah, it's the voters, they voted to put it on the ballot, so
and I would have voted to put it on the ballot. I don't know if I would have done it this fall or not, but I wasn't there, and I had made the decision not to be there, so I'm going to support what the city commission did.
Well, the county commissioners, when I had them in, they decided that it wouldn't be a good idea to put it on the primary ballot, although that would have brought a lot of people out. Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to come out anyway for the primaries, but
I do too. Yeah, it would be it's too quick to put it on, in my opinion, either ballot. We don't have the case made yet, as Daniel R. Peterson pointed out. We don't have the case made yet.
Do you have plans even for it?
Yeah, there are plans. Okay. Yeah, because remember, we built, we proposed one.
Okay,
and so we have those plans. they're going to have to be modified because we're going to put the fire stations in there as well and use the property. But one thing you need to remember is the city hall is on Rouse now. The city shops are on Rouse. There are two sets of city shops on Rouse.
That's because the streets are there too.
And Rouse is getting rebuilt by the state, so we won't have that expense. Also, we won't have to move out of a building until the other building's ready, right? Where if you were to build it on site, there's all these issues with the district court. Those wouldn't be city issues were we to just build on our own.
Now,
there are a lot of issues that this would solve.
Yeah. Where's the proposed site? Where would this thing go?
So it's there between, on Rouse, between Tamarack and Oak, where the Montana Department of Transportation used to be. And it's just sitting there empty.
Yeah, that long
right
block,
now.
Yeah.
That very long piece of property. It's about 8 acres, totally sufficient, not only for now, but in the foreseeable future, for 50 to 100 years, of course, that acreage. And if you will recall, back in the day, I recall 2 failed jail ballots where the county sheriff tried to convince me as a voter, taxpayer, and county employee that a jail would just never fit on the property at the law, where the Law and Justice Center is now. And they proposed it twice over on Oak or down by the interstate because it would never fit.
Yeah.
And, of course, listening to that kind of thing, you have to know it would fit either place.
Well, tearing the old one down helps.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, but not fitting. Well, but that was all. That's a huge site. If you took that site and plunked it in the middle of New York City, there would be plenty of room for everything municipal New York City ever wanted to do there. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of perspective. We live out in Montana. We have a different perspective. I do support, just like I supported many things that the city has gone ahead and done that the county does not mirror. And there's a very different culture within the city of Bozeman than there is in the county as a whole. And I think that the clash of those two cultures, you see that from time to time, and I think we see that it isn't a case of eliminating the extra hallway or the extra 2 bathrooms. That hard cost goes away pretty quickly. The operational changes that you need to make as you meet the demands of the future, and that's why I brought up the 20 years when it hasn't worked so far. Those are the expensive things. The changes in operations, the demands for future-proofing a site. Those are the ones that you kind of leave off that you just can't deal with when you're undertaking this partnership that you can respond to within your culture when you're going it alone. And I think that's a very important piece. It's subtle. It's hard to express. It isn't like, now they can't share bathrooms. It isn't like that. There's a lot more to it. And so a thoughtful person, I think I can reach.
Yeah. Okay. 23 minutes after the hour, if you're just joining us, we're talking with 3-time mayor and current city commissioner Jeff Krauss. Shane Tauman's on the line with us from Vancouver, British Columbia. And hey, if you want to meet Dominic of Dominic in the Morning, hey, stop by and say hi to Dominic. He's out at Frontline Ag Solutions, and they're live out there till 1 o'clock today, 205 Floss Flats Road. Jeez, who named it Floss Flats Road in Belgrade?
Flats Road in Belgrade.
Flats, yeah, in Belgrade off Jackrabbit. Hey, they got food and lots of fun stuff over there. You could take a test drive on John Deere vehicles and try out lawnmowers and all kinds of stuff over there. So head over to 205 Floss Flats Road. And Dominic is there. Scott's there. So if you want to talk about any of the stations.
Oh, yeah, you go. Including this one.
Yeah, you can light up Scott. He's out there as well. So, if you want to meet Dominic, the movie star, the TV star, check it out. And again, they're at Frontline Ag Solutions, 205 Floss Flats Road in Belgrade off Jackrabbit Lane. So check it out. So have a good time over there, I guess. So
That actually sounds pretty fun.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of remotes for KMMS. XL Country does them all the time.
George used to do. I used to meet him at the donut shop. He used to have a donut shop thing in the mornings over there. He used to go up to the city or the state as well. He used to broadcast from up there. Yeah, and I've met Aaron, the guy that's on 9 o'clock. I've met him a number of times all
Flint.
over the state. Yeah, Aaron Flint. Yeah.
All right, let's take some phone calls. 522-TALK is the number, 522-8255. Caller, you are on Open for Business with Jeff and Shane and me. What's up?
Not much, Tom. I just listening to Jeff talking about all the stuff, the different cultures of the county and the state.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, I would like your opinion. Like, what is your opinion on the role of city government? I mean, cops, fire, water, sewer, and gutters, and that's where it ends, in my opinion, and city planning. Other than that, there shouldn't be anything. There shouldn't be any discussion about housing, affordable housing, this and that. I mean, we are victims in Gallatin County of basically, I tie it all to that movie that Robert Redford made, 30 years ago or wherever it was. The river runs through it. Oh, go to Montana. Buy up a bunch of land. You get all these rich people coming in, building big houses, property taxes go through the roof, yada, 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 everything else related to that. But do you think that the scope of city government has gone beyond its original thing? And I'll hang up and listen off air. Thanks.
All right. Thanks for the call. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, in theory, governments are instituted to protect individual rights. That's why we have governments. And of course, as Americans, we buy off on that from the Declaration of Independence. So, at its very core, that's what governments are for. In municipal government, I tend to take, I paraphrase Governor and Mayor Wilder from Virginia and Richmond and say it's pipes and public safety. So you keep the toilets flushing and the water running and and you have public safety, which is courts and fire and victim witness and police and those kind of things, the entire justice spectrum, which includes prosecuting attorneys and the rest. I think so that's first, pipes and public safety, and then I do think that over time local government has taken on some other things. We do libraries pretty effectively. I think Bozeman has a great library. And a lot of
that was done with private money too, not taxpayer money.
Half of it was, but half of it is taxpayer money. Yeah,
sure.
And cleaning up the waste site, the asbestos waste site, that was public money as well. Again, that's a public safety issue.
I think what the caller is talking about, if you remember back when Kershaw was in, the city commission sent a CD, anti-war CD, to Washington, and you've had people come in wanting Bozeman to be a sanctuary city, and you guys voted that down. And now Monday night we're going to we're going to join the United Nations, and that's something to talk about that's coming forward. And you've read about it, and probably if you've read letters to the editor. I voted against and refused to sign the city commission resolution that demanded that we withdraw from Iraq. Right.
For example, as if 5 city commissioners in Montana, in a little town of Montana, should know, because it's democracy in action, what's going on up at the with foreign policy. So no, I didn't join in the pure democracy effort to demand that we withdraw from Iraq either. And there have been a number of those over the years, and I think that yes, we do tend to get into things that we have no business getting into.
Yeah. All right. Hope that answers the question. All right, we got to duck out here, pay some bills, and it's 29 minutes after the hour. It's Saturday, May 12th, 2018. Jeff Krauss is in the house, former mayor and current city commissioner. Shane Tomlin's on the line with us from Vancouver, British Columbia. News Radio, AM 1450, KMMS in Bozeman, 1340 KPRK in Livingston, and on fine computers around the world everywhere, KMMSAM.com. Back with more stuff after the news. All right, welcome back, everyone. 24 minutes before the top of the hour, Saturday, May 12th, 2018. Temperature is 50 degrees outside. Tomorrow's Mother's Day, I believe.
It is.
Yeah, tomorrow's Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to all you moms out there, and all of you other mothers. You have a nice day, too. So,
yes, indeed. And in Canada, all those mothers in Canada, happy Mother's Day.
Oh, they celebrate Mother's Day in Canada?
We do have mothers here.
Oh, okay. That's
geez.
good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So, what do you get your moms up there? Snow cones or what?
There's rumor a mother drove a bear to a Dairy Queen the other day to get some ice cream.
Oh, nice.
There you go.
Yeah, now that is one tough mother right there. Yeah.
The ones we were talking about. Yeah, the other thing, Jeff, we
by the way, it did actually happen.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, I believe it. I believe it in Canada.
Well, we had those two Canadians that came down and loaded the moose in the back of their Subaru or whatever it was, didn't we?
Yeah.
They got into some trouble for that, I believe.
Well, you can't transport exotic animals across state.
Yeah.
Or,
well, they thought it might be
international
cold,
borders.
right?
I guess I don't know. Whatever, but. The other thing we kind of touched on, Jeff, but I wanted to continue on with affordable housing, which is the ever since I've been here, every city commission has tried to force this on the community some way, somehow. We've had every possible idea, I think, thrown out there, but it still hangs around. We were just talking about mobile homes that, we're okay with building these tiny 800 square foot houses, but we got some kind of aversion to mobile homes being put on, land anywhere. So.
And that's just not consistent. And you heard the call from Keith, I think it was, talking about Sharon's situation out there, where the regulations prevent building the kind of mobile home parks that we used to have. These are mobile home parks that hundreds of people, low-income people, live in right now. And when one goes away, we're all wringing our hands and saying, woe is me. They would not be allowed to be built today under current regulations. So this whole wringing our hands and saying, woe is me, you're getting rid of a mobile home park is hypocrisy, because you won't let another one get built. If you said, hey, we'll let another one exactly like that get built over on the south side somewhere, well, then you would be a little less hypocritical. But we don't allow those to get built. We have a bunch more regulations, and so they're not getting built.
Yeah, I think even the county, I don't think you can put a mobile on a county site.
Without building curbs and gutters and sidewalks, and some of the stuff is federal, right? Oh, you're discriminating if you don't have all this stuff in there.
Yeah.
And that's what Sharon said. Well, then I guess I won't do anything. I'll just watch the money keep rolling in, because as it gets more expensive. So that's one. I think we have a hypocrisy about mobile homes versus tiny homes. I think that's a ridiculous hypocrisy. I think also this thing that requires a team in 6 months to give birth to 8 homes. We don't need 8 homes. We need 80 or 800. And it turns out that the only thing people hate worse than density is sprawl, or the only thing people hate worse than sprawl is density.
Yeah.
But and so that's growth. Well, if you artificially constrain growth, if you decide, well, we're just not going to have any anymore, we're going to stop it, or we're going to slow it down. And there was a significant period there where we did slow it down. We didn't annex. We didn't. We had some no growthers on the commission, and we fell into a hole. We fell behind, and we're still behind. Demand, even today, for housing that can be lived in by people who make moderate means, and that that may be too deep a hole for the Bozeman municipal area to ever fill at this point. As we talked about, land is so expensive in town now. It's much more likely that we will see mobile home parks and other affordable housing go away to be replaced by high-end housing in Bozeman than that we will achieve affordable housing in Bozeman. It's much more likely that we'll go in the opposite direction. And, the definition of insanity is really you have too many regulations to build enough housing for the demand. So how do you respond? You adopt some more regulations. And with the Unit Development Code that we just adopted, we imposed a whole new layer, a brand new layer of regulations on top of the other regulations that we had. And then we did this inclusionary zoning where if you come here and you build a new house, part of the cost of your new house, which increases the cost of your new house, goes to build a house for someone else. Yeah. And that's not going to work either. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've done everything from, you sell the house at 190 or 200, but you got to live in it 10 years and then, whatever. And I don't know. I mean, there were so many things thrown out over the years about this.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know of a way that you can force the market to do what you want it to do.
Well, they're trying to make people work for nothing. Yeah. So, I don't think that's going to be a successful strategy.
Let's take a phone call. 522-TALK is the number. Caller, you are on the air with Jeff and Shane and me. What's up?
Hi, this is Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi. My mobile home park development is actually, I still have preliminary plat on it.
Oh, good.
Between Bozeman and Belgrade. But I am looking at now possibly annexing into Belgrade because of the water and sewer and prices. It's just the question is the community going to support it or not? But I think it's getting time to where maybe I should look at rebuilding it again.
Well, can you rebuild it in today's regulatory environment?
I think so, especially if I annex into the city.
Okay. And it's
I have preliminary plat from before, and then the market tanked.
Right, from before 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's still okay.
I still have extensions on it, yeah.
Okay, well, that's good.
I just don't know how much it's going to cost.
Yeah.
I need to look at the stuff. But we did go before the planning committee a few months ago, and they were open to the idea of some of, annexing into the city some of that. I just don't know if they have the capacity in Belgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And you're able to design a park that looks like what we traditionally think of as a mobile home park, and not sort of create a big lawns and
typical subdivision.
Turn it into a typical subdivision.
Oh no, a lot of it was typical subdivision with curbs and gutters and sidewalks, and a big portion of it though would be commercial to bring in jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then there would be the mobile home park for if I remember correctly, we could have sold some of the lots off, and then people could buy the lots and put affordable manufactured homes and stuff on it.
Okay, so they would own their own property then, not just lot rent from the.
Yeah, I think it could be both.
Yeah. All right.
It's pretty. The zoning out there is mixed use, so it was kind of, a good thing, and Belgrade was very supportive of it at the time. It's just, a lot of the dealing with DEQ and the environmental regulations, because I've got the water. It's the sewer.
Yes.
I would have to build, and it's very expensive, and I can't just drop it because I put a lot of money into it, years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just lose it all. At some point I hope to recapture it. So anyway, it's still out there.
Yeah.
And so, if you were a government and interested in affordable housing, you might extend the sewer out to her as part of annexation, and encourage that as a way to get affordable housing.
Right,
mm-hmm.
And then they would increase their tax base.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Well, good luck with that, Sharon. I hope it works out for you.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Hey, thanks for the call.
Thanks for calling. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, 522-TALK is the number, 522-8255. Caller, thanks for waiting. You're on the air. What's your name? What's going on?
Oh, my name's Ed, and I wonder if Jeff thought about this. It seems like there's so much thrashing around between the city and the county all the time, and, kind of a lot of duplication probably of people's functions and things. Has anybody ever thought of trying to fuse together the county and city government? I mean, do they do that anywhere around the country? Does it simplify things at all?
Well, San Francisco is its own county and city.
Yeah, well, closer to home, Butte-Silverbow, right?
Yeah.
But Butte-Silverbow is, Butte is Silverbow.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty much.
I didn't know that, but that's, yeah.
And then there's Deer Lodge, Anaconda Deer Lodge. Those two are combined. But again, Deer Lodge and Anaconda is Deer Lodge County, so they're very homogeneous, right? If you look at Gallatin County, we have Manhattan, and we have Belgrade, and we have Three Forks, and we have West Yellowstone, and Big Sky, and Four Corners, and Willow Creek, and
so all those people would be pissed off if there was a single city-county government, because they would lose influence over their own.
Their own destinies and their own governance. And, well, I think it is, I'll put it to you this way, sort of in a government theory thing, is combining those would dilute the say they have over their local government considerably. And I think that, I used to say when I was county treasurer that Montans love government. We have 15 or 16 school districts in Gallatin County alone, I think Montana has more school districts than the rest of the country or something like that. I mean,
we got a lot of
crazy.
them, I know that.
And so, so no, I don't, there has never been any support for that in Gallatin County, and it's because they're not homogenous like Butte-Silverbow or Anaconda Deer Lodge, where the big city is also pretty much the county.
Yeah, so, I see. So the people in the small towns around would think that Bozeman was taking over.
Taking over, right? Yes, I remember when I was on the local government.
Los Angeles would be resented.
Yes. When I was on the local government study commission, that we had someone from Willow Creek say we should build a fence around Bozeman and keep those crazies in there, and so I remember that pretty well. As a matter of fact, and then there's people in Bozeman. You think about the things that people in Bozeman vote for, which swimming pools and parks, a lot of swimming pools. There's amenities that are in Bozeman that citizens of Bozeman ask from their city government that a county government would not provide. So. It's that to each his own thing that you've seen these little towns grow up this way.
Yeah, and they wouldn't really stomach, kind of some of the left-wing wackos that are in Bozeman, the Kirchhoff types.
I think that I think that's what the guy from Willow Creek was saying. Yes. And so I think there is a warning out there. There's a thing that's going to happen when we get to be 50,000, when there's a combined metropolitan area of 50,000, which is coming up as Bozeman and Belgrade grow together.
Pretty soon,
we will become a metropolitan area, and then we'll be forced by the federal government to adopt regional planning and regional transportation plans. And so the feds will come in and mandate that we combine some of these things.
Not the feds, no.
Well, you know how it is, man.
Oh, no.
Vote.
I don't mind too bad when they're out there taking care of the grizzly bears and the black bears and the national forest, but man, it gets painful when they start mandating. These unfunded mandates become very expensive.
Even the state highways, you could see an issue there that we've talked about time and time again. But you got to vote. Got to vote.
Yeah, gee. I mean, might have to move to Three Forks or something.
Yeah, there you go.
So in Canada,
all right, yeah. What do you got, Jane?
So in Canada, we have a proper solution to this. In Vancouver, the total area is 2.5 million people, and it's called the Greater Regional Vancouver District. And so all the cities in the Lower Mainland, and there's about 9 of them, they all are independent, but we have a Greater Regional Vancouver District Council made up of all the mayors of all the cities that sit down to discuss the things you're talking about. so that it can be systemized. It can be integrated, and it can be standardized as far as the guidelines and requirements on a regional basis across the whole area. So, you're not having to work out how you can do something as far as roads and water supply and electrical power and everything. It's all done as a group. So that's something you might consider, is putting it in a regional district commission or district where the mayors all meet together to work these things out and then take back to their independent councils.
Yeah, maybe I'll call Park County and see if they want to join Bozeman as well.
There you go. Yeah,
I know we're going out to Park County, so hey, we could, and they could be part of the Law and Justice Center effort as well, right? We could throw Madison County in there, and I think there's some geographical things. For the most part, I believe. The county and the city do work together, right? Mm-hmm. And what the county does, I think so. Yeah, I think the county reflects their political constituency, particularly the ones that are extraterritorial. And I believe the city of Bozeman reflects its constituency, and they're different. They're obviously different, right? Mm-hmm. And so this will, I can name several things, and they're obviously different. And whether it's recreation and parks is one of them, but there's a number of more fundamental ones than that. And I just think it's we have neighborhood groups that are part of our official government. I don't see that out there. There's just a lot of things that are different in the city, and I think consolidating is probably not the way to go for Gallatin County in any time in the near term.
Well, just the distances to travel is one thing to consider. It's a trip to go to West Yellowstone from here.
Yeah, it is.
So.
When I was county treasurer, I had a back door into the state system, and I would take a couple computers down there in January, and a couple of motor vehicle people, and spend all day just doing motor vehicle down there, calling up on the phone. And phone charges were what, a couple of $100?
Mm-hmm.
To be on the phone all day, not too huge, maybe $300. That's still a lot cheaper than buying another building down there and setting up an office. And of course, in those days, January was the big month. Yeah. Remember, if you've been here a long time, we used to everything changed in January, and I think that that was a very successful thing. So operationally, one of them that I think about a lot is water. More regional water planning. Sharon's issue with wastewater, I think, and one that we've heard from Clint over the years on. Those are things that, working regionally, and it's interesting, working on the water system, we'll be working with the ditch companies and the farmers directly. And I think, let's not forget that it was the miners and the farmers that made the desert bloom and put in the reservoirs that we're still using today. And that kind of far-sighted thinking is lacking in local government these days. And we need to look at reservoirs and storage and the way that we're all allowed to live here now, and how can we pass that on to the next generation.
Yeah. Shane, you've got you've talked about it before, and I'm not, as sort of like a Prop 13 kind of deal where people stay in their homes. They don't move as much as, and you don't have the intercity issues that we do from time to time.
Yeah, well, basically the difference between our taxation issue in Canada and yours is people can't write off their interest on their mortgage. But the government doesn't charge them or tax them on their profits on their homes. So the result of that, of course, is that older homes in all of our cities are sold and either built, torn down and rebuilt, or a lot of people, refurbish them and fix them up. So we don't have what you'd call a slum area, really. We have older parts of the city, but what happens is a new generation tends to move into that area, buy up the property, renovate or rebuild, and that's because of that great benefit that you get. I have a daughter, and they have 2 homes now, and one they've refurbished completely, and they rent it out, so now they have monthly reoccurring income that covers both their mortgages. And they just had their second child, and in 2 years they can buy another home and do the same thing, did all the work themselves. So by the time they're 40, they'll have 3 properties, 2 are income properties, and they can go out and buy the land and build the home of their dreams and have a plan for retirement with 3 income properties in their own home.
Yeah, so...
one of the things that's happened that we never talk about, but that, the difference between moving here in the 70s and the way we are now is we all lived in fixer-uppers, right? And people were allowed to build fixer-uppers. Well, fixer-uppers are pretty scarce in Bozeman. All the fixer-uppers, which were the marginal housing, I always used to tell people I lived in every marginal building in Bozeman,
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are torn down and some of them are have been reimagined or revitalized or rebuilt. And so once all the fixer-uppers are gone, that takes a whole level of affordability out of your community.
Yeah.
And there's not really a way to replace fixer-uppers, right? Because people aren't allowing their stuff to go south as much as they used to. And because and so the what Shane's describing about buying and fixing up is hard to do in Bozeman because people have already searched out every single one of the fixer uppers they can find. There's a couple of areas in Bozeman where I tried to encourage that during the recession when I was mayor the second time with limited success, but I think about behind Safeway or over there behind the Buttrey's or Hastings Shopping Center. That area is slowly revitalizing, but there's not a lot of fixer-uppers left in the city of Bozeman. And that's taken an entire level of appreciation and ability to have a real estate resource away from people that are getting into the market now. Which is why we talk about affordable housing. We're almost always talking about new.
Yeah. Well, the other we just had a thing we did a blog on the bad areas of Bozeman, and one of them was right over here. Is it Grand? There's 3 or 4 houses there that are all graffitied.
Yes.
Whatever. Talk about your fixer-uppers there, but
the boarded up,
they're
graffiti covered, boarded up. The guy that's coming in, he's going to build another 5-story building on the parking lot. We've got the Save the Parking Lot crew now. Save the Boarded Up Buildings group. Those issues revolve around parking. When I lived, on Lammy, where there's a parking lot now, right by the old hospital.
Right.
There wasn't any parking there. There was never any parking there in the 80s, the early 80s, because it was used up by the hospital.
Yeah.
Which is why they bought the houses and hauled them off so that they could build more parking. Well, now we want to put people there again. Mm-hmm. And we have to decide how much are we going to worry about parking and how much are we going to worry about housing.
Yeah.
Because the two get in the way of each other.
Well, in 5 years, you won't be worrying about parking because it'll all be AI-operated cars. So there you go. You'll be able to tear down those parking units or areas that you have and build on them.
Yeah, well, I think parking crater. It's a big parking crater to the west of the old hospital. There's 3 or 4 blocks of parking there.
At least
it's broken up a little bit, but there's a ton of it there. And imagine if that was 2 stories of parking and 3 stories of living.
Yeah.
How many units that would add to downtown Bozeman?
There you go. All right, we got to duck out of here, pay some bills, and we still got an hour to go. Shane and I are going to take over here. Jeff's going to hang around, but we're going to move more nationally, I guess, in the next hour. We want to talk about the 3 hostages being brought home. Trump gave a big speech in Indiana. California has they're going to put illegals on boards now, and New Jersey is the governor wants free college tuition for illegals. So we've got a lot to talk about coming up in the next half hour, and we'll also have our market wrap up that we do every week as well. So Jeff's here, Shane's here, I'm here. We'll be back. Full hour of Open for Business yet to come. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everyone. It is 6 minutes after the hour, Saturday, May 12th, 2018, 51 degrees outside. Jeff Krauss is in the house. Shane Matavin on the line with us from Vancouver, British Columbia. I don't know what you would call Vancouver, but anyway, it's something.
It's just an incidental coastal city.
A whole bunch of rich people live there, you know.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
We're all rich here in
That's
Canada.
right. Yeah, If I had your money, I'd burn mine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the top, golf clubs to belong to. So why not?
Why not? Huh? Well, a lot happened this week, Shane. Pretty full week, all things considered.
Wow.
Yeah.
Indeed. I mean, you look at what's being talked about and not talked about. That's the thing that's most fascinating. I mean, you start the list off with this situation in North Korea where, the Trump administration with his Secretary of State brings home some Koreans that have been held for the last 4 years or up to the last 4 years. And, of course, you would expect in any kind of a situation like that, whoops, you lost me.
I did. You off the phone? All right, we'll try that one more time. Jeff's still here.
I'm still here. Yeah. Let's see. What can we talk about?
Well, yeah. Shane's phone line. He's got a thing and two strings or something out there.
Two cans and a string. Yeah.
Let's take a phone call. 522 Talk is the number. 522-8255, and we'll call you on the air. What's going on?
Hey guys, Ken here. Was just kind of curious.
Am I on?
Shane, how's the economy? Have we talked about that lately? How's the economy in Canada doing these days?
The question, Shane, how's the economy doing in Canada these days?
Well, we're doing quite well. We're growing at a steady 5% rate up here. Of course, that has to do with the debt that our Prime Minister has been compiling to get the economy going. So infrastructure is helping out. And being the commodity-oriented economy that we have and the price of oil up, as you know, we seem to be just motoring along. So we follow you. Great success in your country results in the same in ours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys this. What's the solution to this debt overhang that the United States has? I know Canada's isn't near as much as what we've got here. What's the solution? I mean, how do we rid ourselves of some of this debt?
Well, I don't know that we need to, and I'll tell you why. We're at 21 trillion now. That's not the debt of the U.S. government. That's the debt of everybody. That's you and me and businesses and everything else. When you're talking about the government debt, you have debt in your own home, I assume. You might have a mortgage payment, you might have a car payment, whatever. You're able to manage that debt. You have a little more coming in than you spend.
Right.
Well, that's what we do with the federal government deficit, is that we are able to service that debt comfortably. We're able to pay that monthly $1 billion, I think it's around $500 or $600 billion, something like that, per month, with income coming in. And we're able to service that debt and pay Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, those are the and Social Security. Those are the three mandatory payments government has to make. The other debt is debt that we hold, ourselves. So, for example, they always point out the debt per person in the United States. The debt per person is $64,540. The assets per citizen is $424,000. Now, that would be your home, your investments, cars, real estate, whatever you have. And so that's the issue. Obviously when you're saying, wow, $21 trillion in debt, holy smokes, but that's a debt GM owns and Apple owns and, Amazon owns, Coke owns. That's not what the federal government has. We're talking about two different numbers here.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that just for the caller, so that you can appreciate what Tom's saying, your debt is nearing it's $21.2 trillion, but of that, just over $6 trillion is held outside your country. So, you're talking about 90 to 95% of your debt is held inside your country.
Yeah, we own it. We owe it to ourselves.
You owe it to yourself. So the people holding your own debt are being paid that interest. So this is not something that exposes the United States to a huge thing as far as on the global market is concerned, because you control most of your debt internally.
Yeah.
China does not own your country.
Yeah.
China's got 1 point. What I can tell you exactly what they've got. China has 1.1 trillion dollars
of that 21 trillion.
Of the 21 trillion.
Yeah.
Japan's number 2 with 1 trillion.
Yeah.
And they use it mostly for their banking systems and to operate, and to put the money that they hold that's American somewhere. That's how much cash they have of American money, and they usually put it in U.S. debt to generate interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's
how much? What does the government owe then? Do we have that number?
Well, the government's about $4 trillion a year. Is what they operate on.
Okay.
So that's from taxes and fees and tariffs and whatever, income and all of that. So
the U.S. takes in about $3.4 trillion in revenue from taxation. And remember that taxation is paid by less than 15% of the people in your country, because over 60% of the people in your country don't pay any taxes. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of it's broken down with the other 44%.
Yeah. So.
Right. Okay. Well, that gives me a better understanding.
And the top 10%, the top 10% people of wealth in your country pay 60% of your debt.
Right. Right. So there really there's no real need for higher taxes and austerity or forgiving debt or anything like that.
Not as long as we can service the debt comfortably. And right now we can't.
So I would disagree with my two colleagues. This is Jeff, right? I think the $22 trillion is a existential crisis for our country. We can service the debt now. You buy a house that's way too big for you, and you're skating by. You can live an extravagant lifestyle as long as you can make the minimum payment on your credit card bill. Mm-hmm. But at some point, you have to pay the piper, and when the piper comes, the payment to the piper comes due. That's when our country will be threatened, and so I do disagree with Shane and Tom about that.
I got to wave the white flag on this one, Tom. So it's a misdemeanor and a misdirection by politicians and most people to talk about your debt that way, because what they don't want to talk about is the $97 trillion of unfunded liabilities across your country, both in government and business. And, they keep wanting to talk. It's sort of like people talk about the Dow 30. There's over 6,000 public companies in your country, and people just pay attention to 30. And, it's the same thing. Everyone just talks about your debt, that it's some terrible crucible that's going to cause all this horrific problem. And it really isn't that. I mean, the problem in the next 2, 3, 4 generations are the unfunded liabilities that exist out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing to point out, we have when we talk about $21.2 trillion in national debt, the total assets of the U.S. is $139 trillion. So you got $139 trillion versus $21 trillion. So that, it would seem to me like $100 trillion debt wouldn't be a problem if you got a $200 trillion income.
Which assets would you liquidate first to pay off the debt? Yellowstone Park or what?
Well, that's it. Why? Well, the point is, if you can pay off debt, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's right.
And when debt becomes a problem, then you adjust your income, accordingly. If you can't afford to pay your credit cards, then maybe somebody in the household has to go out and get another job.
Yeah.
Here's a big plan. 60% of the land west of the Mississippi is owned by your government. Sell some of it.
See, sell the national forest.
Yeah,
so you've got a solution from our two guys, right?
Yeah, we'll sell some of it, yeah.
There you go. Like that. Like, really? That's not at all what I'm suggesting.
What we haven't mentioned is like the entitlements and what am I thinking of? Pensions.
Pension.
Yeah, that's in there.
Like you said, the unfunded liabilities.
That's all in there. Sure. State debt, 1.17 trillion. Unfunded pension liability is 6.1 trillion.
It's big. That is haunting California, and Illinois is probably as close to bellying up as anybody. They're starting to lose. Because Illinois is starting to lose their employers who are moving to Indiana or surrounding states because they're not seeing these big tax increases with nothing to show for them. So if you're just raising taxes to pay debt or to pay unfunded liabilities, not to put infrastructure in or whatever, or to pay current costs, you're going to be non-competitive with other places that don't have that overhang.
Yeah.
And that's another reason debt is an issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, and repatriation of wealth from other countries, bringing it back here. We got $1.5 trillion in student debt loan. We got $15 trillion in mortgage debt.
Wow.
You got 1.02 credit card debt.
Credit card debt, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah. And, but it all comes down to, just like you run your own house, if you can manage the debt affordably and have money left at the end of the month, you don't have to borrow money to stay afloat, then debt's only a problem when you can't pay it.
It becomes a problem before that.
Well,
it becomes a problem when it starts to interfere with. I mean, you could still pay it if you gave up food and medicine.
Yeah,
it would be a problem then.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Well, that's what I talk about when you manage debt.
Right.
If Bill Gates and I both went out and bought a Gulfstream jet, which one of us do you think would have the problem paying it off?
Yeah.
Right.
Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's another one. How much money do we spend servicing the unfunded liabilities, as Shane talks about, and also the debt? And what could we be doing with that money if we didn't have that?
Right.
And I think that's so it becomes an issue before you absolutely default.
Okay. So currently we got 126 poverty programs, so we should have 200.
No, we should actually cut taxes, but that's well,
we've gone from 45 million people on food stamps to 40 million. We've dropped 5 million off food stamps in the past couple of years. That's pretty good. Now we talk about these unfunded liabilities. My phone bill for the next 10 years is an unfunded liability. My electric bill for the next 10 years is an unfunded liability. When the time comes, I've got to have the money to pay that electric bill and that phone bill. But at the current time, if I couldn't pay my 10-year phone bill,
right, that's true.
So these are some of the terms that are thrown around for no other reason than to create fear in the mind of a voter. If I don't vote for this guy, bad things are going to happen to me.
I see. So it's not that big of a deal, then, really.
Well, as long as we can comfortably service the debt, which we can at the moment, it's not a big deal. Now, if it comes to the point where we can't service the debt comfortably, then it becomes a big deal.
Okay. Do you see that? Do any of you guys see that here in the near future? 18 months, like I'm reading. You read these economic newsletters, and they're saying 18 to 24 months. Man, we're going to have a financial crisis.
Well, they were saying that 10 years ago too.
Right. So yeah, you're right. You're right. I agree.
I'm not a financial advisor, but no.
Well, yeah, but the whole concept of sovereign debt created 50 years ago was predicated on the following: if the country is in a recession, because economists came around to the idea of we're not going to call these downturns depressions anymore. We're going to call them recessions. Mm-hmm. So let's go into government debt and have infrastructure plans to keep the recession low and employ people. And so then the government creates infrastructure programs which they fund and pay people to work. And once the recession turns and the economy starts to grow and the income of the government starts to increase because of taxes, then you take the excess taxes because of that and pay the debt back. Mm-hmm. Well, the problem for the last 50 years, with the exception, and I got to hand it to him because of the prosperity of the 90s, Clinton, he did that. And by the time he was out of office, the United States wasn't even issuing 30-year bonds or 30-year bond debt. They were just issuing 7 and 5 and 2 and 10-year bonds because they paid off so much of the debt because of the growth of the economy. So if you can get back to where you see expansion of your economy, greater revenue from your tax income, and you pay off the debt, then you see the flip side of debt spending.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think all those economic newsletters that want you to buy gold or put food in the basement or whatever it is, that isn't the discussion we're having, okay? We're having a discussion about, what are our priorities nationally and, what should we set aside in a time when we are doing pretty well to pay down the debt. And of course, Russ Fagg, the judge that was just on earlier, he came out with a balanced budget amendment. I think it's important to borrow money for long-term assets. Mm-hmm. I think it's equally important not to borrow money for short-term, to borrow money for groceries, or to put yourself in a position where you have to borrow money for groceries.
Yeah, but a balanced budget amendment in your country is a misdemeanor, like limits on people. You re-elect your entire House of Representatives every 2 years, so you have a term limit already. It's just the same people get re-elected, unfortunately. And it's the House of Representatives that's got the control of the purse. If they want to do a good job, and as we talked in the second block briefly, consider a budget, do their job, make sure that you manage the budget so that you have money to pay off the debt. If you want to pass a budget amendment, if you want to add an amendment to your Constitution, you should say the government's got to take 10% of all their revenue they generate in taxes and pay it towards the debt every year. That would be something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the other thing to look at here is that months ago, Shane, we were sitting here watching the federal deficit go down.
That's right.
And the reason it isn't going down now is because we had to borrow money for Puerto Rico and 2 hurricanes in Florida.
That's correct. Absolutely.
Because we had to pull that. We didn't have that money on hand, so we had to pull that money out of somewhere. So that's why.
And the remarkable thing was the market that is created, because the bond market when it comes to the market in the world, you have currencies, you have equities, and you have debt, bonds, sovereign debt. And when that money needed to be raised, it was bought up like instantly. There wasn't any problem raising that money that was needed to do, and like Hawaii. Look what's going on in Hawaii. They need help.
Yeah.
But the point is you've got the system that works efficiently, and it's global in its approach.
So I would also say that in local government and state government, at least in the state of Montana, they do have balanced budget amendments. We are required to balance our budget every year. So,
but you're only required to balance the operating budget, not the capital budget.
But you still yes, you can borrow money for long-term assets.
Yes,
you can
roads, bridges,
you can have a mortgage,
whatever,
right?
Yeah.
But you cannot you can't put the police on a credit card.
No. Yeah,
and that's all I'd be and if that's all we got out of the feds, I would say hallelujah, that would be worth it.
But I think
me too.
But if
I feel the same way.
Yeah, but
do you think every member in Congress, complaining about the salaries they get paid, do you think that senators are entitled to a budget for their office each of $1.5 million? That's that right there, $700 million a year. I mean, excuse me. Right there's like $150 million a year.
Oh,
and what about your House of Representatives? They get $1.7 million for their office.
It costs $3 billion a year to run the White House.
That is no bargain, let me tell you. And how far are we away from George Washington or Andy Jackson, and their circumstances.
1850 was the last time we had no debt.
Right. Yeah. We're a long way from from that ethic, right?
Yeah.
And
but don't provide money for the president's family in the White House for his personal expenses or the state dinners that he has, because he's got to pay for them all personally.
Yeah, well, the question that we all ask ourselves is, how do you go to Congress, make $174,000 a year, and come out of it a multimillionaire?
Yeah,
we all ask ourselves that question, and until we start voting, right, for people that will tell you, hey, I'll just show you where everything every year. This is how I turned $174 million into $50 million worth of real estate investments because everybody helped me.
Yeah.
Right. And then I voted for their projects. Well, once you get down to that, then you know who the crooks are.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, if you want me to sit down someday and balance the budget for you, I certainly could do that. But there is no political will to do that in this country.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
I agree.
Yeah, well, the other thing that we've talked about, if you want to have a budget, and most of us live within a budget. I have a budget that I created in Excel, and I live by that budget. That's what we operate on, and I think the government could do the same thing. But the problem that Shane and I point to time and time again is that if you want to balance, if you want to have a budget, all the agencies have to be audited so we know where they are, and they don't want to be audited, so no budget. So
because they've been making personnel moves that would be out of budget.
We just keep kicking that can down the road.
Let me give you an example. If you take the 72
real quick, music's playing.
Oh, I'm out of time. Sorry. All right, 10 seconds. 72 major agencies in your government right now have in their bank accounts over $4 trillion. $4 trillion. They could pay down the debt to $16 trillion. Boom.
All right.
Overnight.
Let's do it.
Thanks for the call. All right. We got to duck out here, pay some bills. Shane and I'll be back with the market wrap up after this, so stay tuned. We'll be talking a little bit more about debt and all that stuff, I guess, coming up. So we'll be right back. Back, everyone. It is 24 minutes for the top of the hour. Tom Eaglehoff, your host, Open for Business. Shane Matobin on the line with us from Vancouver. And Shane, let's take a phone call before we start the market wrap up. 522-TALK is the number, 522-8255. Caller, you are on the air. What's your name? What's going on?
Well, this is Pete.
Pete.
I'm wanted to speaking about the budget and all this money and stuff makes me crazy. And I'll answer Jeff's question. question. You know, we all ask ourselves, how do you take a job at $174,000 a year and end up retiring with millions? And that's because you're a damn crook.
Oh.
That's how that works.
Is that the short answer?
That's the short answer. Now, you know, Trump is talking about spending money on infrastructure. Obama was given $800 billion for infrastructure. Where'd that go?
It's still sitting in the government agency bank accounts that I mentioned at the end of the last block.
The whole $800 billion?
$4 trillion are sitting in the bank accounts of 72 government agencies or your federal government, cash. Trump could shut down your government for 6 months and they'd have all the money they need to stay open.
Well, let's do that.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm wondering what we get all this money, and I'm wondering what do we got to show for it if, you know, there's $800 billion for infrastructure and it's just still sitting there. So we're talking about more.
Well, if you remember, Pete,
what you have to show for it is you live in the greatest country club in the world.
Yeah.
What a deal.
Well, the problem is we're not members.
Well, if you remember, Pete, way back in 2008, 2009, every time you turned around, you saw some big sign that
ERA.
Yeah, that said, your funds are being used to do this road or what. I think they spent it on signs.
You know, and accountants filling out the forms. A lot of it was just to prove that you complied with the regulations. Look, where was the Grand Coulee Dam? Where's the Hoover Dam? Where's the Fort Peck Dam? Where's the, where are the giant projects that we saw in the 30s with the public works projects out of ERA? And the truth is there aren't any. And it's because the money got swallowed up in shuffling it back and forth, and maybe it's still at the government, but it's certainly not visible in the giant public works projects that the Great Depression resulted in.
Well, there's so much waste that it's unbelievable. I mean, $175 million gas station, where, in Afghanistan or Iraq or something, nobody uses the damn thing. I can build you a hell of a gas station for $175 million. You know, it's when you start looking at this stuff, where the money went, $5 trillion fighting over there for what? To keep them from coming here? How are they going to get here? In a rowboat?
They got those flying carpets.
Well, whatever. You can't carry many munitions on a flying carpet.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
You know,
the ones with the air-to-air missiles are really expensive, but they look nice.
Well, I think, if you cut the waste out of government, you think you got a great country now. You could literally have streets paved in gold.
There you go.
So you get them knotheads in there with their no budget. We'll just go 3-4 months at a time. Bam, 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 bam. You need money, go to the Federal Reserve, flash your credit card, bang, it's over. Get your money, go do whatever. Yeah, I think we don't have a spending problem. We don't have a debt problem. We do have a spending problem, not a debt problem, rather.
We don't have a revenue problem. What did they say? $3.4 trillion? And the next time I hear revenue enhancement, I'm going to go crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. With this whole thing about it ends up a catch-22. Trump cuts our taxes, the government gets more revenue and grows. Yeah. And that's
what's the problem?
Yeah, the problem is we can't win. We can't win. You get a tax breakthrough, and the government grows because they collect more revenue.
I guess we need Charlie Sheen, don't we?
What we need is if they give the people of this country a $1 trillion tax break, we need to force them to cut $1 trillion out of their budget so that the revenue enhancement will even out.
There you go.
Have fun.
Thanks, Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, you bet.
522-TALK is the number, 522-8255. Caller, you're on the air. What's going on?
Subcommandante Block Commander Jeff checking in.
All right. How you doing, Jeff? Long time no hear from you.
Jeff and Shane, nice to talk to you and hear a kind of a balanced conversation.
Well, we're trying.
I want to talk one thing about the actual kind of fantasy that cutting taxes is going to increase the revenue,
Mm-hmm.
that would be fine. But how about in the last tax cut, there should have been an amendment that if it doesn't happen, we raise the taxes on a certain amount of people because they didn't supply the jobs, they didn't invest in the economy. Just a little clawback thing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Well, I like
because it hasn't happened. It's never happened.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, but I appreciate your argument, but 10% of the wealthiest people in your country pay 60% of the taxes.
And they own 90% of the money.
Wait, but you're talking about paying taxes. They pay for the government. 10% pay 60% of the taxes. Over 50% of the people in your country pay no taxes. This is a misdirection. It's a misrepresentation.
No, you pay a tax on everything that you make a transaction.
No, 60% of the people in your country don't pay any taxes.
No, you pay a tax, and every product has a tax added on to make it a
profit. But we're talking about federal tax. That's a totally different discussion.
I want to talk to an American.
Oh, okay. I just read your information and deduct the reasoning from it.
Here's my solution.
Okay,
here's my solution.
Go for it.
It off. Okay, Mr. Gianforti was on the State Voices of Montana thing,
mm-hmm.
and he made a comment that, well, if you don't balance the budget, you shouldn't get paid.
Yeah.
Now, we know that's peanuts. How about this? As long as the budget's not balanced, campaign contributions and lobbyist fees have a 95% surtax.
I could do that. Yeah. Well,
that would solve a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Mr. Sheldon Adelson just gave a Republican super PAC $30 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, Hillary spent $1.2 billion on her election to beat Bernie and Mr. Trump. So please.
Well,
$1.2 billion.
All else I was going to say is Dick Cheney was right. Deficits don't matter. Bill Clinton had balanced the budget and was going to pay off the debt in like 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans got in, and now we have trillion-dollar deficits as far as the CBO can see. That's the congressional process.
No, you can make a case that the Republican Senate balanced the budget for Bill Clinton. By reining in
the
spending,
promise
it happened.
For America. It did happen. It is possible. The promise for America happened.
The IT industry that started in 1983 and took off created 42 million jobs and huge revenues for your government, and they had the money to pay it off. So it didn't have anything to do with Clinton, and it didn't have anything to do with the Congress. It had to do with economic growth in your country.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing about who owns the wealth doesn't really matter because wealth is not finite. There's not a certain amount of dollars in the world. Dollars are created every day out of thin air, as you know. So
our government is being bought and paid for. Look at Michael Cohen's latest, and I have enough topics on the table, and I'll listen off the air.
Okay.
Thanks,
all right,
guys.
Thanks, Jeff. All right.
Okay, if I could take 1 minute, I just want to, before I get to the numbers for the week,
go for it.
Two dinosaur eggs dropped this week, so I want to cover one real quickly because we reported it first in December when Disney bought Murdoch Fox's content, not the news media section, for $52 billion. And this week, and then we brought this up last week about them announcing they're going to go direct streaming and with their own content. So this week they announced they signed a 20-year contract with the Unlimited Fighting Championship. So now there's your egg, folks. Disney's going to stream. They're going to go right direct to the public and get paid directly. So your cable companies and everyone else in the next several years are going to find themselves in a world of hurt because no one's going to use them. That's number one. Number two, the other big egg that dropped this week was the founder of a Chinese company, a billionaire, was charged with fraud. He ran a big, huge insurance company. And this is one of these markers Tom and I have been looking for, that if the government of China starts prosecuting these billionaires in their country that have cost them great deals of problems, their economy is going to swing into a big recession that could cause huge problems. On to the currency and the market wrap-up. Wow, what a week. Nothing but good numbers for everybody this week. The stock market around the world globally, from here to China and back, all green. Everyone's happy. Even the SOPI in South Korea was even up and strong. Europe is up across the board. So it looks like the equity market is holding in. Commodity prices, as we know, the only one we're looking at of concern, the crude oil is now back at 70, but it got to 73. Brent's at 77 in Europe. Natural gas at 281, so it was up a bit, not flat. Gold's going nowhere. It's just holding moderately because it doesn't really matter. Silver's holding it at $16.50. Gold at 1,300. And here's an interesting thing. Soybeans were only down marginally, $21, and wheat was only marginally down $29. On the other commodities that we talk about and everyone's so concerned about, hogs down 20 cents on the week, so it doesn't look like the Chinese tariff they're putting on their own product is going to hurt them. And when you look at the aluminum market, down $47 this week, and steel down $167 a ton this week. So looks like tariffs aren't hurting a lot of the things everybody concerned themselves with. The one thing that is really important, and we've sort of covered the bond market, and I'm trying to rattle through this quickly, the U.S. dollar is getting stronger. So the euro dollar was down 3 to the U.S. The Aussie and other major currencies were down. So don't see any reason for the Fed to raise interest rates because the dollar is supreme. And the U.S. is still holding in on its 10-year debt, 2.9% on it, which makes it the best deal to invest in the world. So bring the money here, folks. Invest in North America. There's your market wrap-up for you, Thomas.
All right, there you go. And we should point out, Venezuela, we have been pointing out their inflation rate is 8,900 for the last couple of weeks. Well, they've gone up to 13,379% inflation rate.
That's right. Gas is still at $0.10 a gallon, and you can't find toilet paper anywhere.
There you are. Yeah, the closest one's Argentina at 25% inflation. So, Venezuela's winning the
exactly
winning the rate.
Well, and the sad thing about Venezuela is they have the largest oil reserves in the world, and their oil industry is collapsing because they didn't invest any money in it. But there is an election coming up soon here in Venezuela. We'll see how that turns out.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
Oh, and by the way, did you see that article the other day that over 50% of Americans now live in sanctuary cities? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, there you are.
50%.
I feel safer. How about you?
I feel sanctified. Yeah.
Right. Well, the other big news was that Apple got within $6 of being the first $1 trillion company.
First $1 trillion, baby.
Yeah,
that's huge.
Yeah, that's pretty good size there. So, and that 10-year bond just won't break that 3% mark.
No, it won't. It's holding in, which is a good sign. It's
hanging in there.
That's a huge sign.
Yeah, it's hanging in there, but
it is, and there's nobody close to that type of return on a sovereign debt. Mm-hmm. So it's there are a couple. I mean, like Brazil, but who wants to buy Brazilian bonds?
Yeah, that's true. Well, the 30 years at 3.10, and they're predicting that's going to go to 3.16. By June, sometime in June. So we'll see how that plays out.
Well, I don't see him doing it. There's no reason for the Fed to uptick that rate.
No. Well, we talked about they would probably raise rates 2 or 3 times this year. Now, I'm not so sure they're going to do that or not.
No, I don't think they are, Tom.
I think they're going to sit tight and wait. The Dow closed up 91. It's still positive for the year with 5 days of increases.
That's right.
Doing pretty well.
And it shows some strength and a willingness to be able to move forward. You sent me an absolutely terrific article by Charles Payne, who was talking about the Dow trying to reach for 7. Mm-hmm. And it was a great article because it leads through a lot of what people have been talking that have called in today. And the remarkable thing is the expanding growth of your export markets just by deregulation is quite impressive.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, Facebook made up all of its money back. They're at 180. They closed at 186.99, almost 187, and that's about where they were when this whole debacle started back in March, I guess, somewhere in there.
That's
and,
right.
Went down to 116 or something like that, or whatever.
So people didn't give up Facebook, just like they didn't move to Canada after Trump got elected. So
that's pretty much it.
You just can't depend on them for anything.
Can't
can
depend
you?
on people to do any of this stuff. So yeah. So. Well, all in all, pretty good week. We've got our primaries coming up in about 3 weeks.
I would guess for a lot of people there'll be a letter in the mail in the next day or two. The ballot will be in the mail in the next day or two. If you're
went out Friday, I guess. So.
Permanently, I'm permanently absentee.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, so, and keep in mind, too, one of the fascinating things is, you look at Microsoft, it has 8 billion shares out. Apple has only got 861 million shares out, and is still heading towards that $1 billion value. Yeah, it's a pretty impressive number, You got to look at it from the standpoint of, wow, here's what you call something of value.
Yeah. Well, speaking of fast food, Chick-fil-A trying to open another place in New York City. De Blasio is saying they should boycott them.
So I made a point of going to Chick-fil-A for breakfast because their chicken biscuit is
pretty good,
pretty outstanding. Yeah. And and I was eating the chicken biscuit and thinking. I actually talked to a guy in the airport, and I said, imagine that a delicious chicken biscuit is threatening the welfare of New York City, which is, if you read that New Yorker magazine article where the Southern Christians and their cow advertisements and delicious chicken sandwiches are corrupting New York City. That just shows you what a silly world we live in now, that Chick-fil-A would be any kind of issue whatsoever other than when are they going to have a biscuits all day long.
Yeah. Well, also, too, I think they've got 2,200 restaurants. I think they do more per capita than McDonald's, Shane. I'm not totally sure of that, but I think I read that somewhere. Maybe
in North America, yes, but not globally.
Yeah, North America, yeah. But
So, and another reason, just so for our listeners, again, capitalization, number of shares out is important. So you can look at Facebook, keep moving, because they only have 412 billion shares out.
Okay. Good to know.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Oh, geez. Well, what else happened this week? We've got California is allowing illegals to serve on boards, government boards.
In the interest of affordable housing, California has mandated that all houses be built with an extra $10,000 solar roof now.
Yeah.
So that's going to make it a lot more affordable. What does $10,000 do to your monthly mortgage payment? Borrowing an extra $10,000, it adds considerable, maybe $100 or something.
Yeah, to your payment.
A month to your payment, and that's of course in a state where affordable housing is at a critical point in several of their big cities. So. They're going in the opposite direction, in my opinion. And, if you wanted to build a new house, the house of your dreams, your dream home, would you build it in California any longer?
Yeah. Well, there's a mass exodus out of California and Illinois, too. 600,000 have moved out of Illinois because of taxes and regulations and all of the pensions and all of the other things that are going on there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is in California over the last 4 years or 10 years, 4 million middle class Californians have left the state, and that's just a sad view of what used to be a paradise. Is people in the middle class have decided, I'd rather go live somewhere else for a lot less.
Yeah. Well, I did.
Yeah, and I don't blame anybody. I don't blame anybody for making that decision. I did just read where Florida, I think in the next census, is going to pick up one of New York's New York State's congressional seats. Yep.
Yep, and Texas too.
Yep.
Texas will be picking up.
And and that's a blue state, red state shift.
Yeah, California's lost $58.63 billion in adjusted gross income between 1992 and 2016. They've lost 23, 24, 25, 26 in the last 26 seconds, 29, 30.
Yeah.
They're losing 3,000 or 4,000. And interestingly, they've gained wealth from New York, Illinois, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. So,
and on the Real Clear Politics this week, they've got, as you know, they've got 44 Democrats holding, 8 toss-ups, and 48 Republicans. So there you go, Tom. I'm getting close to my 10.
You are getting close, man. I don't know.
Republicans are going to pick up 10 Senate seats and 15 more House seats.
Wow. What a prediction.
Yeah, if they picked up 10 Senate seats, that'd give them 60. They could do pretty much anything
60,
they wanted to do with
61.
60. Yeah.
61, yeah.
So we'll see how that plays out. I don't know. That's pretty optimistic, but we are going to see some primaries that should indicate some things as to who's running and the issues they're running on.
That's right.
Because I think more and more people, rightly or wrongly, depending on your point of view, are running on Trump. And I think everybody is running against Trump on the other side. So it's pretty much a Trump either vindication or repudiation. Pick your adjective.
Well, if he sticks a feather in his cap with North Korea,
yeah,
then he pokes a feather in his cap with Iran, and the economy keeps moving ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're going to see anything change in the House or the Senate except more Republicans.
Well, I hope.
You saw him take on that. You saw him take on that guy in Indiana when he was, when he went to Indiana, and I think you're going to see your president flying around here in the next once this election campaign starts going and all the primaries are over.
Yeah,
you're going to see him going around the country and challenging all. Missouri, he's going to go to. He'll probably come to Montana.
He might. Yeah.
It's critical that Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer continue to get out there and campaign hard for their candidates.
Ain't that the truth?
Could you believe Nancy Pelosi actually admitted to wanting to raise taxes?
Well, I'm not sure I believe that or not, but
she said
I don't know. I think I want to see the soundbite of that. I doubt she said that. All right.
All right.
That does it for us. Hey, thanks, Shane, for being here.
Always a pleasure. Be happy. Be safe, buddy. Talk to you next Saturday.
All right. Take it easy. Jeff, thanks for being in with us.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank
Jeff
you very
Krauss,
much.
Current city commissioner. You got a meeting Monday night, so you'll be on Tuesday to chat with Dominic about that. So
I will be.
We'll be looking forward to that. All right, we got to get out of here. News Radio, AM 1450, KMMS in Bozeman, 1340 KPRK in Livingston, online, KMMSAM.com. I'm out of here.